Hello and a very good evening. You're watching the news at 6 on Rajya Sabha television with me, Frank Pereira. Here are this evening's headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi makes concluding remarks on the debate on commitment to constitution in the Rajya Sabha. Opposition parties target government on intolerance and controversial remarks made by union ministers. JDU announces support on GST bill. President calls for cleanliness campaign for the mind, says India and Indians need to get rid of divisive tendencies. RBI keeps interest rates intact in its monetary policy. Central Bank to watch inflationary trends before announcing its next step. And Russia makes an explosive charge against Turkey at the Paris climate talks, accuses Turkey of shooting down jet to safeguard its oil trade with Islamic State. Our top focus on the bulletin this evening. Prime Minister Narendra Modi today delivered the concluding remarks on the debate on commitment to the constitution in the Rajya Sabha. Addressing the members, the Prime Minister said people don't have to give proof of their patriotism. Speaking about the need to promote unity and harmony, the Prime Minister said that instead of taking sides, we need to consider issues dispassionately.
संविधान एक उत्सव होना चाहिए। संविधान की हर भावना के प्रति हमारा आदर सत्कार पीढ़ियों तक चलते रहना चाहिए। ये संस्कार विरासत है, ये हम लोगों का दायित्व होता है। ये सिर्फ तू मैं करने से देश नहीं चलता है, देश कभी साथ साथ मिलकर के भी चलने से चलता है। और इसलिए संविधान एक ऐसी शक्ति है जो हमें तू और मैं की भाषा से बाहर निकाल सकती है। संविधान एक भावना है जो हमें जोड़ने की ताकत देती है। और ये सदन ऐसा है कि जहां पक्ष और विपक्ष से ऊपर निष्पक्ष का भी एक मैसेज हिंदुस्तान को जाने की ताकत रखता है। और इसलिए इस सदन का मैं अतिशय आदर करता हूं।
Meanwhile, a united opposition upped the ante against the government in the Rajya Sabha while holding the discussion on commitment to constitution. The government faced the attack on the issue of intolerance and controversial remarks made by some union ministers and BJP MPs. However, the JDU also announced its support to the government's ambitious goods and services tax bill.
The opposition parties remained unrelenting in cornering the government as Rajya Sabha debated the commitment to the constitution. Slamming the BJP over the issue of Hindu Rashtra, JDU leader KC Tyagi cited the low representation of Muslims in political and constitutional posts. He also lashed out at some BJP leaders for their Pakistan remarks, reminding them that Indian Muslims did not go to Pakistan during partition despite having the option.
देश के अंदर जितनी भी विधानसभाएं हैं, एक भी मुसलमान किसी भी विधानसभा का स्पीकर नहीं है, इंक्लूडिंग जम्मू एंड कश्मीर। कैसा हिंदू राष्ट्र बनाना चाहते हो?
Trinamool Congress member Derek O'Brien accused Finance Minister Arun Jaitley of indulging in cowboy constitutionalism on the issue of obstructions in Parliament. He alleged that the government was trying to belittle the importance of the upper house of Parliament, a charge strongly refuted by the leader of the House, Arun Jaitley.
So one gets very disturbed and saddened that a lawyer and an eloquent speaker like the leader of the House, outside the House, make statements demeaning this Rajya Sabha. To quote, and I quote the leader of the House, "It's a serious question in a parliamentary democracy wherein bill after bill, the wisdom of a directly elected House is questioned by the indirectly elected House." I have to tell, through you, sir, to the leader of the House, please do not indulge in cowboy constitutionalism.
In a bicameral system, the relationship between two houses is a constitutional issue, not a cowboy issue.
CPI leader D. Raja condemned the atrocities against Dalits and demanded caste-based reservation in the private sector.
Government will have to consider to extend the policy of reservation in private sector. And what is private sector, sir? Yeah, one should be very clear. What is private sector? As Mr. K. R. Narayanan himself has said, We are not asking
Everybody
private
knows the
sector
definition. You
to
need not
implement
define.
the policies of socialism.
Please conclude.
AIDMK's Shashikala Pushpa, DMK MP Tiruchi Shiva, Congress MP Jesudasa Seelam, Republican Party of India A's Ramdas Athavale also pitched for inclusive development. Kriti Mishra's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, let's now cut across live to the Lok Sabha, where the Home Minister Rajnath Singh is addressing the House.
परंपरा में अध्यक्ष महोदय आप कहीं नहीं है। समाज में असहिष्णुता यदि बढ़ी है, जब हम मूल भारतीय विचारों को छोड़कर ऐसे विचारों को अपने जीवन का आदर्श बना लेते हैं जो कहते हैं सर्वाइवल फॉर द एग्जिस्टेंस,
दैट इज वेरी बैड,
अस्तित्व के लिए
वेरी बैड,
सर्वाइवल
चर्चा उठाना और चले जाना इज वेरी बैड,
तो कट थ्रोट कंपटीशन, ऐसे लोग असहिष्णुता को बढ़ावा देते हैं। अध्यक्ष महोदय, मैं यह भी कहना चाहूंगा, कुछ लोगों को लगता है कि आज बोलने की कोई स्वतंत्रता नहीं है, बोलने की कोई आजादी नहीं है। याद दिलाना चाहता हूं, ध्यान से सुनिए खड़गे साहब, याद दिलाना चाहता हूं कि अभी पिछले महीने मुस्लिम पर्सनल लॉ बोर्ड से जुड़े एक विद्वान अब्दुल रहीम कुरैशी ने अपने किताब में यहां तक कह दिया कि भगवान राम पाकिस्तान में पैदा हुए थे। मेरी बात सुनिएगा, आप जल्दी आक्रोशित मत होइए। मुस्लिम पर्सनल लॉ बोर्ड से जुड़ा, मेरी बात पूरी सुन लीजिए, मुस्लिम पर्सनल लॉ बोर्ड से जुड़ा व्यक्ति भगवान राम के बारे में धार्मिक मान्यताओं पर आघात करने वाली टिप्पणी कर दे, उसके बाद भी कभी भारत में कोई प्रतिक्रिया नहीं होती है। यह है सहिष्णुता, यह है सहिष्णुता। किसी विद्वान को जो भी उचित लगा उसने बोल दिया, इससे मान्यताएं नहीं बदल जाती हैं। इसके बाद भी यदि किसी को लगे कि देश में सहिष्णुता नहीं है तो यह आश्चर्य नहीं है तो और क्या है अध्यक्ष महोदय। मैं इसे आश्चर्य और संदेह की बात इसलिए मैं कहता हूं क्योंकि सहिष्णुता को एक विशेष संदर्भ में देखने का सारा प्रकरण उत्तर प्रदेश के दादरी में जो एक घटना घटित हुई वहां से प्रारंभ हुआ और एक गृह मंत्री होने के नाते मैं इस सदन को बतलाना चाहता हूं। अब देखिए, अब आ गए जो प्रश्न आप लोगों ने खड़े किए थे जी,
ये सही है। देखिए जो विषय है उस विषय पर बोलिए।
Well, there you have it, of course, cutting across live to the Lok Sabha there, where the Home Minister Rajnath Singh was addressing the House and speaking about the government's perspective as far as the debate on intolerance is concerned. Meanwhile, in the Lok Sabha, Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi addressed members on the intolerance debate. Targeting the government, Rahul said ministers were trying to send Bollywood stars to Pakistan. Pakistan failed because they crushed the voice of their own people. He also questioned Finance Minister Arun Jaitley's statement that the dissent on intolerance was manufactured. He asked if Raghuram Rajan, Narayan Murthy and several others were part of this manufacture.
Protest का मतलब sedition. The Prime Minister talks about economic growth and progress. At the same time, his colleagues talk about sending Bollywood stars to Pakistan. India is successful because we have given our people the space to talk. India is successful because we have embraced our people and let them be part of the conversation. Our greatest strength, Madam Speaker, is our tolerance. Pakistan has failed because they did not allow the voice of their people to be heard. They have failed because their leaders crushed their voices that were inconvenient to them. Their biggest weakness is their intolerance. I request the government, please do not learn the wrong lesson from them. Please be tolerant. Please listen to your people. Embrace your own people.
Well, BJP MPs have been asked to avoid making provocative statements amid the intolerance debate in Parliament. In the first parliamentary party meeting during the winter session, Parliamentary Affairs Minister M. Venkaiah Naidu told members that provocative statements were being used by anti-BJP forces to deflect attention from the Prime Minister Narendra Modi's development agenda. Members were also briefed about the recent elections, including the one in Bihar, where BJP suffered a huge defeat, and the need to work on spreading the party ideology was stressed upon. The meeting was attended by BJP President Amit Shah, union ministers and other party leaders.
पार्टी के वरिष्ठ नेताओं श्री वेंकैया नायडू जी ने पार्टी के संसद सदस्यों से कहा है कि हमें संभल करके और शालीनता के तरीके से अपनी बात रखनी चाहिए। विवाद से बचने की जरूरत है, क्योंकि आज श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में देश में बहुत अच्छा काम हो रहा है। देश तेजी के साथ विकास के रास्ते पर बढ़ रहा है। गांव, गरीब, किसान, झुग्गी झोपड़ी का इंसान उस तक विकास की रोशनी मजबूती के साथ पहुंचे, इसके लिए काम हो रहा है। और निश्चित तौर से कुछ ऐसे लोग हैं जो कि इस तरह के विकास के कामों को हजम नहीं कर पा रहे हैं।
Meanwhile, in the middle of a raging debate on perceived intolerance in the country, President Pranab Mukherjee has once again delivered a sharp message on the issue. This time, he said that the real dirt of India lies in the minds of its people and not on the streets. He called out to all Indians, asking them to cleanse their minds of divisive thoughts.
The real dirt of India lies not in our streets, but in our minds, and in our unwillingness to let go of views that divide society into them and us.
It is important for Indians to cleanse their minds of divisive thoughts. That's the message sent out by the President. Citing Gandhiji's vision of India as an inclusive nation, he said the essence of being human was our trust of each other.
Every day we see unprecedented violence all around us. At the heart of this violence is darkness, fear and mistrust. While we invent new modes of combating these ever-spiraling violence, we must not forget the power of non-violence, dialogue and reason.
This is not the first time the President has spoken about intolerance in the country after the Dadri lynching and other such incidents. Exhorting the father of the nation once again, the President said he gave us an object lesson in ahimsa.
We must free our public discourse of all forms of violence, physical as well as verbal. Only a non-violent society can ensure the participation of all sections of the people, especially the marginalized and the dispossessed in our democratic process.
The President's reminders come in the backdrop of the Parliament also debating the intolerance issue. President Mukherjee was speaking at the inauguration of the Archives and Research Centre at Sabarmati Ashram. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Moving on, now the RBI decided to keep interest rates intact in its monetary policy announcement today. The central bank said it will watch the inflationary trends before making its next move. RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan said the focus of monetary policy will shift towards achieving a consumer inflation target of 5% by March 2017.
The RBI on Tuesday retained the repo rate at which it lends to commercial banks at 6.75%. The cash reserve ratio, funds that banks need to keep with the central bank, was also held steady at 4%. RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan said the bank will keep an eye on commodity prices, especially food and oil.
We believe its effect on aggregate demand will be offset by appropriate budgetary tightening as the government stays on its fiscal consolidation path.
The central bank cut repo rate by 50 basis points in this last policy review in September. In all, the central bank has cut by 125 basis points this year to spur economic growth. However, retail inflation climbed to a 4-month high of 5% in October as food prices escalated on supply deficiency in pulses.
The only uncomfortable thing is they have insisted there should be control and better monitoring on food items. Basically, this is the only thing which is a matter of concern.
The industry found Rajan's move pragmatic but warned of upcoming fiscal and inflationary pressures after 7th Pay Commission recommendations are implemented.
More than ₹1 lakh crore goes to the Pay Commission while implementing the recommendation of the Pay Commission. Certainly it will put a huge burden on the central government budget, and the state government will be in deep trouble.
The RBI governor noted that second quarter GDP numbers indicate early signs of recovery, but he chose to stick to the earlier projection of 7.4% for the current fiscal. India's gross domestic product for the 3-month period ending September grew 7.4%, slightly higher than the 7% in the previous quarter. Kriti Mishra's report for Rajya Sabha Television.
Well, let's now get you some more updates from across the country in our segment Nationwide. The Enforcement Directorate and Income Tax Department today conducted raids on firms linked to Congress leader Karti Chidambaram. The move is in connection with the money laundering probe in the Aircel Maxis case. Raids were conducted by One Vasan Eye Care and Advantage Strategic, a company that is also involved in the Aircel Maxis deal. Security forces on Monday night busted a militant hideout and recovered arms and ammunition in the Poonch district of Jammu and Kashmir. The recoveries included rifles, pistols and grenades. PIL activist and senior lawyer Srikanth Khandalkar was found dead in mysterious circumstances in Nagpur on Sunday. He had helped to expose the Maharashtra irrigation scam. Khandalkar's family sought police investigation into the death. Well, heavy rains lashed Tamil Nadu and neighbouring Puducherry, disrupting scheduled flights and flooding several areas. Education institutes were also closed because of the heavy downpour. The Weather Office forecast heavy to very heavy rainfall in both regions tomorrow as well. Well, it's time for a short break now, but news and updates will continue on the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
GDP figures rise for second quarter. RBI holds its lending rate. Are these signs of economic recovery? Is India's growth story back on track? Watch the big picture at 6:30 p.m. on Rajya Sabha Television.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is back home after pushing for green diplomacy at the Paris Climate Change Conference. Addressing the Mission Innovation event hosted by US President Barack Obama, Modi said that developing nations need space to grow while combating issues of climate change and global warming. Modi also launched the International Solar Alliance along with French President François Hollande. He pledged India's assistance of $30 million for the initiative, which is aimed at bringing together developed and developing countries. Modi had a packed schedule as he also held bilateral talks with top international leaders, including US President Barack Obama, Japanese President Shinzo Abe, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani, and a host of other world leaders. He also met his Pakistani counterpart Nawaz Sharif for a casual meeting on the sidelines of the summit.
We have to ensure, in the spirit of climate justice, that the life of a few does not crowd out the opportunity for the many still on the initial stage of the development ladder. The advanced countries must leave enough room for developing countries to grow.
Meanwhile, world leaders continue to discuss ways and means to cut down global carbon emissions on the second day of the climate summit in Paris. The opening day saw them condemning the horrific Paris attacks, with the focus now shifting to climate change. They are seeking a deal within 2 weeks to reduce global carbon emissions. The aim is to limit global warming to 2 degrees Celsius by 2030.
World leaders addressed two big global challenges at the climate summit in Paris on Monday. In their opening speeches, they offered condolences to the hosts before leaping into the issue of climate change. Leaders of the world's most vulnerable countries on the front line of climate change, like the low-lying Pacific Islands, said their country's very existence was at stake.
For those of us whose survival, whose very survival is at stake, our plea is very simple. Let us give substance to the pledges that are being made. Let us not pay lip service to an issue that demands immediate and urgent action.
France and Mexico, along with the heads of the World Bank and IMF, urged other nations and big corporations to put a price on carbon emissions. They also launched the Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition initiative.
Today, with these leaders, we have an opportunity for the first time to truly put the world on a path toward low carbon and more resilience in the future.
As talks progress, billionaires and rich entrepreneurs are set to join politicians to look for innovative solutions to make use of renewable energy. On Monday, US billionaire Bill Gates joined the US, France and India in launching the Mission Innovative initiative. The initiative aims to improve technological advancement in the production of clean energy. Prince Charles is also expected to make calls for better protection of world's forests.
Two initiatives we're launching here, the increased governmental research and the private investment, are to address climate change and to reduce the cost of energy, to reduce poverty. We need to move to sources of energy that are even cheaper than the hydrocarbon energy we use today. We need it to be not only clean, but also reliable.
Security remains tight in the French capital as more delegates arrived for the second day of the UN Climate Change Conference. The COP21 aims for a new agreement that will put the world on track to limit global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius over the next few years. After the failure of a previous summit in Copenhagen 6 years ago, a landmark agreement is expected this time around. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
More international news now. Russia-Turkey relations continue to nosedive over the shooting down of a Russian jet near the Syrian border. At the Climate Talks summit in Paris, Turkey challenged Russia to prove its claim that Ankara shot down the plane to protect its oil trade with Islamic State. The US, meanwhile, appealed to both nations to set aside tensions and focus on their common enemy, the Islamic State.
Last week, Turkey suggested that climate talks in Paris will be an appropriate place to ease tensions with Russia. But instead, the two nations had heated exchanges over downing the Russian plane near the Syrian-Turkish border. Turkey challenged Russia to prove its claims that the plane was shot down to protect its oil interests with the Islamic State. President Erdogan even pledged to step down if allegations were proved true.
Решение по поводу того, чтобы сбить наш самолет, было продиктовано желанием обеспечить безопасность этих путей доставки нефти на территорию Турции, как раз к портам, откуда они отгружаются в танкеры.
Böyle bir olayı yaşamasına sebebiyet verecek provokatif girişimler, provokatif adımlar atılmaz. Ama Türkiye'nin kendi sınırlarını koruma ve kendi ulusal stratejik çıkarlarını koruma iradesinden de
US President Barack Obama called on both leaders to move beyond their diplomatic confrontation and focus on the Islamic State jihadist threat. This came after Obama met with his Turkish counterpart in Paris. NATO has also warned that such incidents continued to be a risk.
I welcome Turkey's efforts to establish contacts with Moscow and to its contacts with Russia to de-escalate the situation. I urge Russia to play a constructive role in Syria by targeting ISIL, our common enemy.
Meanwhile, the body of Russian pilot who was killed arrived in Moscow late on Monday from Ankara. The pilot was killed when ethnic Turkish rebels opened fire as both crew members parachuted to the ground when their plane was hit on Tuesday. The second pilot was rescued. The downing of the Russian warplane wrecked Turkish-Russian relations, with Russia already slapping Turkey with a series of economic sanctions. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, here's a roundup of the other international news in Global Buzz. After extremist attacks in Europe, the United States has decided to tighten security procedures for its visa waiver program for visitors from friendly countries. The United States already screens visa applicants from war zones carefully, but will now ask more questions of travelers from countries eligible for visa waivers. Following the Paris attacks, German Chancellor Angela Merkel agreed to honor a request from France to provide support for its military operations against the Islamic State in Syria. Germany is planning to send up to 1,200 troops to support the international coalition fighting against the terrorist group. The International Monetary Fund has admitted China's yuan into its benchmark currency basket. It marks a victory for Beijing's campaign to be recognized as a global economic power. It brings the yuan into an exclusive group of currencies that make up the IMF's own reserve basket. The basket currently comprises the US dollar, the euro, the British pound sterling, and the Japanese yen. Well, that's it on this edition of the news at 6. Have a good evening.